All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. My name is Meg Radinich, and I'm an Assistant Director Career Coach at the Wasserman Center for Career Development at the School of Professional Studies. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss what to consider before accepting an offer, and hopefully this webinar will lead to insights that will help you evaluate and choose professional opportunities throughout the rest of your career. Today's webinar will be highly interactive and will require you to think and reflect on your past experiences and values. So in order to get the most benefit out of today's webinar, I recommend having a pen and a paper close. There will be a few times where I ask you to write some things down, and that would be helpful to have by your side. I also, before we get started, I know that questions will come up throughout the webinar, and you will have an opportunity to ask those questions at the very end. So I'll be happy to take those questions at the end. If you want to hold on to any issues or questions that come up throughout, I'll be happy to answer those a little bit later. So before we get started, I'd like to ask all of you, how many of you have offers right now on the table? And how many of you are jumped on this webinar because you're planning for the future and you're looking ahead for when you do have an offer on the table? Feel free to type where you are in your process right now. Okay, all right, great. So it looks like Yiyu, you're planning for the future. Megan as well, just trying to lay the groundwork now to be prepared. And Mark, you as well. Well, great. And I'm curious, are there any other reasons why you're jumping on this webinar? What brought you here? And why does this topic seem relevant with where you are currently in your career development? If anyone wants to share. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Before we dive in, let's discuss the goals of today's presentation. You probably already know that today's webinar is broken into two parts. So you'll walk away from today's presentation with the tools you need to define what you personally value in a position and a career, to strategically choose opportunities that fit with your long-term career strategy, and to also know how to research and compile data on potential opportunities. Sometimes a position or working for a company may look different on paper or in a job post. And so how do you know if a job is going to be a good fit before you say yes? Throughout the presentation, you'll hear from SPS alumni, an SPS professor, and a seasoned recruiter with their insights regarding this process to hopefully save you some time and energy as you navigate your career moving forward. Part 2 of today's webinar is going to take place next Wednesday on June 20th from 12 to 1, and I hope you'll be able to join us for that as well. In next week's webinar, we're going to provide you with the information you need to feel confident throughout the job offer and negotiation process. So those of you who don't have a lot of experience with a salary negotiation may be a little unsure of how do you ask for more money, and how do you have these difficult and sort of awkward conversations with someone that you don't even really know and that you're also in some situations going to be working for in the future. Then we'll discuss how to manage multiple offers and respectfully decline an offer. Another kind of tough, awkward conversation potentially. Um, letting an employer know that you've decided to go with a different company or that there was a better opportunity. There's a way to soften your approach and be able to maintain that relationship because you never know further down the road there may be an opportunity with that company and you don't want to burn any bridges. And then finally, we will discuss what steps you can take to continue the conversation that we're going to have today and also during part 2 next week. All right. So, why is this topic important? This topic of what to consider before accepting a job offer is important to consider for a number of reasons. One is that you're going to be doing this throughout your entire life. You're not going to stay in one position, hopefully, for the rest of your life. You're going to be constantly on the move. You're going to be always making decisions about what your next step is. And so it's important to know what you value in this process. Another consideration to make is that career impacts every aspect of your life. Your finances, your physical health, your mental well being are all impacted by your work and what you do for a living. It's no secret that our jobs and our careers have a huge impact on our quality of life. Take a moment to consider that the average person will spend 90,000 hours at work over a lifetime. And when you think about that, you quickly realize how important it is to take a thoughtful and intentional approach to your job search. Working in a grueling, draining job where you receive little personal satisfaction and it's not aligned with your personal values, that is inevitably going to impact your personal relationships, your self confidence, your health, and so it's very important to know what to consider before saying yes. Most professionals strive to find a position and work for an organization that enhances all aspects of their lives, one that will allow them to feel a sense of personal pride and purpose and contribute to the world in a meaningful way. It sounds great, doesn't it? but finding a great job after graduation is not a guarantee. It's not handed to you. Forging a satisfying career and life is a process that many professionals arrive at through trial and error. So, just something to keep in mind. Another reason why we're discussing what to consider before accepting a job offer is because you'll need to advocate for yourself in the workplace. You're in charge of your own career and are ultimately responsible for your own growth and happiness, both professionally and personally. And when you stop to think about it, there's not really a point in your career where your employer or your direct supervisor or a human resource representative asks you if you're happy or asks you if you're enjoying your work or growing as an individual, if you're on track to achieving your long term career goals. Knowing what your values are will put you in a place to advocate for yourself and let your supervisors know what you need at work to be your best self and also to know the right questions to ask before you accept a position and once you're in the role. So it may come as a surprise to you that a 2015 Gallup poll showed that 51% of American workers reported not being engaged at work, with millennials showing as the least engaged demographic. I think we can all agree that we'd like to avoid being in that demographic. And with self reflection, planning, research, and effective networking, you're going to be able to uncover the types of roles that will lead you to meaningful work and keep you out of that category of 51% of workers who are disengaged at work. So hopefully today's webinar will help you get prepared and help you know the right questions to ask. All right, so let's just dive right in here. As you can see here, this is a list of tangible values, a list of things to consider before accepting a position. Now, some of these things may be very important to you and others not at all. What stands out? What is important to you? Take a moment to look over this list of tangible values. And when I say tangible, these are things that we can quantify. They're very clear. Um, you know, like, do you have the ability to work from home? Where is this position located? There are certain places in the United States and in the world that I don't care how great the job is, I don't want to live in that city, and that would be a deal breaker for me. Go ahead and take a moment to write out the top 5 values that are the most important. So perhaps you feel strongly that your first job after graduation or your next opportunity must be based in New York City. You have to be living in New York City. There is no negotiating on that. Or maybe you absolutely have to have a base salary of at least 55,000 a year and you're unwilling to consider anything that offers less than that. Maybe for you, that work-life balance piece is at the very top of the list. Maybe you've had a previous career before that required you to stay in the office until 1 o'clock until projects were done. You completely burnt out, and you know that that work-life balance is at the very, very top for you. So take a few moments. And would anyone like to share? Be honest, there is no right or wrong. Everyone has different values, and based on your past experience, which we've all had very different experiences in our lives, you know yourself best. Which ones of these are most important to you? Okay, Janelle, it looks like work-life balance is important to you, a reasonable commute, absolutely, company transparency, and opportunities for future growth. That's a really good consideration to make. That I don't know if a lot of based on coaching appointments that I hold here in my office, a lot of new professionals maybe don't think about, are there future opportunities or opportunities for professional growth down the line? Is this a place where I'm going to be challenged but also supported to be able to grow as a professional? Megan, thank you. It looks like some overlapping with the work-life balance. Predictability is important to you, which is really interesting because that's something that's important to you, whereas another person may prefer to take a more spontaneous and flexible approach to life. They like every day at work to be different, and they get bored very easily. So that's something that's important to you that may not be important to someone else. Wonderful. And continuing education, very important. Great. Mark, it looks like salary and compensation is at the top of your list. Um, and a job function that will set me up for the long term. That's right. A job that will equip you with the skills that you'll need to jump to the next level, and prepare you for your long term career goals. You're in it for the long game. I like it. Great. And it looks like high quality, a workplace that values high quality work. That's something you need to come to work and be at your best. Location is important to you. Opportunities to add new contacts, very important, as well as salary. That's excellent. Great. So as you can see, there's some overlap, but for the most part, we all sort of value different things. And I encourage you to hang on to your list because you may even want to have these values out when you're negotiating or when you're in the process of looking for a new position. When you're on the phone with a recruiter or a hiring manager and they're asking what you're looking for in an opportunity, it's good to have this list out ready to go. It's interesting how we're all across the board. For me personally, I don't really care about the option to work from home, or I'm more productive in the office. I like a sense of community, interacting with other coworkers in person. So this is just me. Whereas actually an SPS alumni recently shared with me that for her, that ability to work remote is a deal breaker. If she was up for a position and they said, it is 40 hours a week in the office, this wouldn't work with her because she recently became a parent to twins, and flexibility shot to the top of her list. So, it just goes to show you as well that your values are going to shift as your life circumstances shifts. That's not something that she really valued early on in her career, but now that she's a parent, that is a deal breaker for her, that work from home and remote option. Great. All right. Now we're going to move on to another list of values. These are the intangible values. So what do you hold in high regard when it comes to these intangible values? And when I say intangible, I mean, these are things that you can't really quantify, but they make a huge impact on your productivity and job satisfaction. If they're not there, you can feel it. For example, like feeling like your boss trusts you. You can't really measure that or ask a recruiter, now before I take this position, how much will my boss in this role trust me? Or how needed will I feel on this team? Those are sort of awkward questions to ask, right? They're impossible to measure, and yet they're also important to a lot of us. Take a moment to reflect on internships and jobs that you've had in the past where you felt like you were thriving and growing, not only as a professional, but also as a person. What did you have at that job that enabled you to thrive? Really think back. If you need to take a moment to sort of close your eyes and take yourself back to that place, think about what intangible values you had at that job that helped you thrive. Right? So maybe you're a really competitive person, and that sense of competition and always having a fire lit under you, where you should fire under you to keep you going, to keep you motivated. Or maybe you're not a competitive person and a competitive environment was sort of a turnoff where you felt like you had to check parts of yourself at the door when you walked into the office every day. Take a look at this list, um, and come up with your top 5. Would anybody like to share? Okay, Megan. Respect, trust, supportive colleagues, and then the vibe and the culture. Great. And again, the vibe, the culture, it's really hard to like, you can't really quantify that, right? It's a feeling, it's a sense of comfort and belonging. Um, Mark, you need to feel needed and appreciated, respected and trusted, and also positive vibes. Okay, I like it. You feeling needed and appreciated, adding value to the world. That's great. Company culture. Okay, great. Okay, so a lot of overlap on this one, um, which is very, very interesting. It seems like we're all sort of wanting the same things. So that's very, very eye-opening. Um, and is there anything from this list, if you didn't have it in a job, you wouldn't take the job? It's that important to you. Um, okay, great. Well, one professional that I met with shared with me a deal breaker that she quickly discovered shortly after taking her first salaried position after graduate school. The position required her to be on call after hours and carry a company cell phone. And since the salary was great, she accepted the position. But soon after working in that position, she decided to never again take a position that required her to be on call. She burned out in 6 months and decided to take another opportunity because always being on call made her feel like she couldn't relax and just leave work at work. She was pretty drained and exhausted. So, again, sometimes you don't realize what you value until you don't have it. And in this case, with this woman, she realized that She values work-life balance over salary and is going to be definitely asking the hiring manager before she accepts the position what the work-life balance looks like, which is something that she maybe wouldn't have asked or would have felt too uncomfortable to ask in an interview, and now she realizes how important it is. So, Mark, definitely, it looks like trust and honesty is very important to you. Can't work hard in an environment of a web of lies. Yes, yes. Um, Okay, Janelle, just going for it with the bosses from hell. Yes, I think we can all agree that supervision and that supervisory style is very, very important. And I think what we're seeing is this shift in a lot of companies from this, superior subordinate dynamic between supervisors and supervisees, and it's more of a mentoring relationship. Um, some companies are finding that in order to retain their millennial talent, they have to provide that kind of management style, um, and move away from that more intimidating, distant relationship that supervisors and supervisees have had in the past. Regular check-ins versus reviews, that kind of thing. Great. Okay. And if you struggled to come up with your values and or deal breakers, or simply want to explore this concept further, the Wasserman Center at SPS has assessments that you can complete in conjunction with career coaching to help you understand yourself better. And for those of you who are not students at SPS, feel free to take advantage of career assessments through the main Wasserman Center on 13th Street. They will help you better understand your personality type and how your preferences fit in the job market. So again, hang on to this list of values because you may want to refer back to this when you are in the interview process and the negotiation process. All right, so in our conversation on values, let's consult an outside perspective. Mary Beth Ziegler is an SPS professor and executive coach who has a thriving 20-year plus career in management consulting, corporate finance, and corporate human resources. Throughout her career and presently, she spends a lot of time coaching seasoned professionals who may be deciding between multiple offers and are unsure of what to consider before accepting one and declining the other. So here she provides us with an example of a real client that she coached who was torn between two competing offers. One position offered slightly more pay, a longer commute, and more career prestige. So more prestigious title, a more prestigious company. The other offered less pay, was a shorter drive to the office, and came with flexibility around time in the office, which was important to her. I think she had a family, and some other responsibilities in her community. So the option to work from home 3 days a week was especially appealing. Mary Beth explains that at first glance, the client really wanted the first job with the higher paycheck and the better title. Her close friends all told her that the prestigious job was the one that she should take. However, she was hesitating about this decision. So Mary Beth did some work with her to uncover what she really values in life, and especially at this stage in her life, what she wanted was more time with her family. Through values discovery, together they also discussed what success meant to this client in her life and also in her work. The client realized that for her, success was more than a salary and a title, that she was sort of beyond caring about the title or the prestige. That this new opportunity, option B, represented a life that she wanted outside of work and that could provide that for her. She realized that she could honor her strong value to be more present to her family, to be more successful on her own terms. So in the end, she decided to forego the better paying position, and the second job became an easier choice. As a result, Mary Beth found that this client was happier, enjoyed her work more, and had greater work-life balance. Her advice to professionals is this: when you're clear on your values, decisions become easier because your choices will align with your values. And I want to say that this was what was right for this particular client. For you, you may really value prestige and the company that you work for and that company's reputation, and that is absolutely fine. In this client situation, this is what made sense for her. So it just goes to show that everyone has different values and approaches this process a little bit differently at different stages in their lives. Um, just out of curiosity, which position would you accept if you were in this client situation? Does anyone want to weigh in? Option A or offer A or offer B? The first one. Okay, perfect. Thank you. More pay, prestige, and the longer commute for where you are in your life. That would make the most sense at this point and based on what you value as well. Thank you. Looks like we've got Mark and Megan thinking. Um, Mark, for you, it comes down to the difference between salary. Yep, very, very important. That hard number and the difference is something you'd consider. Um, Janelle, hard choice, definitely. Um, okay. But Megan, for you, might lean a little bit more towards B. Okay. Yes. Yep. The ability to work from home, that flexibility, um, and have your life, your work built into your bigger life. I think looks like that's something that is important to you. Great. And this is just one example. So I consider, I encourage you to have these conversations with family and friends and people in your network to get a sense of how they make tough decisions like this. Because there is no right or wrong. There's always a lot of gray area. Janelle, depending on your bills, yeah, yes. I think we can all relate to that. And the commute cost would offset the difference in salary. Yes. So, all right. Great. Thank you. All right. So, to help us gain clarity on our values, um, I'm going to take you through a couple questions that Mary Beth uses with her clients. And she says that you can do this across all different areas of your life: work, money, family, but they really strike at the core of what you value. What things, if taken from you, would you make your life unbearable? That reveals what you need to be really happy and functioning in your life. When you're making important decisions, what are your most important considerations? Where do you invest most of your energy and why? And I would even throw in there, how do you spend your time and how do you spend your money? I think those two questions reveal what you truly value and not just what you think you're supposed to value or what you're supposed to tell people you value, but what you truly value. Um, and what do you take the most pride in about yourself? You might want to jot down a few notes or take a screenshot of this slide and really think, because I know these are pretty deep questions. So ask yourself, when it comes time to apply for jobs, are you applying for jobs that match your values? If not, chances are you probably won't be very happy in that job once the novelty wears off. Investing in a job that matches your values at the beginning of your career will set you up for a more fulfilling career trajectory over the longer term. All right. So let's tap into some of our alumni who have stood where you are standing now. This is Brindy Carlson. She's a 2014 graduate of the Integrated Marketing Program, and she shares her answers to some of these questions. She speaks of the importance of culture fit when considering a position. She says that culture fit is one of her top values. When she goes for a new position, she's going through the interview process. One of her top considerations is, are they a value fit for me? And am I a value fit for them in terms of the company culture? Is this an environment where I'm going to be comfortable? Do their values align with my personal values? And you may be wondering, what exactly is culture fit? I think that's a term we hear and we throw around a lot, but what is it, and why is it an important factor to consider before accepting a position? Fair question. Culture fit is the glue that holds everything together. Organizations are looking for candidates whose values, beliefs, outlook, and behavior fit within that organization's, culture. As a professional, you too should consider whether or not a company's culture fits you. Company culture lives and breathes in everything from the company's dress code to their vacation policy to whether or not they celebrate, like employee birthdays or company milestones. Um, Company culture lives in the daily operations and cultural norms of the office. So, for example, in some offices, and maybe some of you have worked in offices like this, colleagues email back and forth, even if they're sitting in cubicles right next to each other, or despite the fact that they're just sitting a door down from each other. And in other offices, there's more of a culture of where the company prefers or the employees prefer face-to-face communication. Most tech companies make a conscious effort to create a creative company culture, which is why you see in tech companies people are riding around on scooters or bikes around the office. There are ping pong tables and a casual dress code. So simply put, culture includes the overall vibe that the company projects and fosters in the workplace. The goal is to find a company that offers a culture that fits you and and provides an environment where you can work at your best. Company culture might not seem important to you now, but if enough of these small little details don't match your work preference, you will eventually just feel a little bit maybe out of place or not comfortable at work. So just something to consider um, as you're applying for jobs and going through the interview process. Does anyone want to share, like if they were in a company where they were doing really well and they felt like the company culture was a good fit? Why did you think it was a good fit? Um, and do you think that culture is important? Company culture, is that something that you're going to take into your next interview? It looks like in Brindy's case, company culture seems to be especially important given the team-oriented nature of her work. So working alongside cooperative and like-minded colleagues that have similar beliefs and communication styles seems to make her job easier and more enjoyable. In her quote here, she's saying it's higher on her list of values even over monetary reward. Is company culture important? What do you think? And welcome, Simrita. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, it looks like Megan, this is very important to you. When I've had inclusive leadership, it's been a good experience. So, Megan, for your next career step, you're going to want to ask that hiring manager, is there transparency between management and um, the people at the very top, and then the entry level professionals or the people who are a little bit lower in the organization? What does that look like? If it's not a company that values transparency, Megan, it may not work. Samrita, you think it looks pretty frustrating that if you couldn't get along with your coworkers because of the culture. Absolutely, especially Samrita, if you're in a role that requires you to be in constant contact with members of your team, maybe be on a conference call every single day, or have a company cell phone where you're talking to colleagues throughout the day and communicating with each other, it would get pretty frustrating. Um, Great. Mark, yes, yes. It looks like, yeah, that ability to get along with colleagues in some cases may even be more important than fitting in with the overall culture of the company. Great points. Okay, Okay, great. So we just talked about how important company culture is and making sure that you're a right fit. But you may be asking, well, how do I know before I even get the job offer and start working and know what it's really like there? That's why it's really important to thoroughly research an opportunity in a company before saying yes. We don't have a crystal ball in front of us to know whether or not you're going to be happy at this company 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line. But if you ask the right questions and research beforehand, you can make a fairly good prediction of whether or not the job is going to be a good fit. So something that's interesting about the time that we live in today is a lot of this information is available to you online. Whether recruiters like it or not, job seekers can find a generous amount of information about the organization online now. Current and former employees can post reviews of their experiences with the company on websites like glassdoor.com, where you can read the upsides and downsides of working at multiple companies throughout the world. The ONET site, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and other resources allow you to see projected job growth in your industry and help you better understand current industry trends. If the company is a public company, you can find information on their financial stability from public findings and public filings and reports. If you listed company reputation and stability as one of your top values, which I don't think anyone here did, but that might be a consideration for you. This tool would be especially important for you to use in your research, the public filings and reports, to get an idea of the health of the company. Websites like salary.com, payscale.com, and Glassdoor will provide valuable information to help you during what can be one of the most anxiety-provoking conversations for new professionals, which is the salary negotiation. So earlier we discussed the importance of culture fit, and how do you get a sense of a company's culture? Well, some companies have started social media accounts to proudly show off their company culture, and if the company has a social media account that that sort of not brags but advertises and markets their culture, that's a good sign. It means that it's something that they at least are aware of and are working on. And here you can get a good idea of what the company values. You might get on their Instagram account and you see that they celebrate employees' birthdays, or they have a bring your dog to work policy. Some tech companies especially are looking for new ways to recruit and retain their top talent by offering unlimited vacation policies as long as the work gets done, and free food on site. One tech company, Qualtrics, recently announced that they give a $1,500 bonus to employees who have been with them over a year that they can spend on an experience they otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford. So remember what is important to you and what isn't, and manage your job search and offers accordingly. Some perks may sound better than they really are in practice, and that's why it's important to talk to your networks and to talk to the individuals within your network to see what is really important. Companies may project a strong company culture on their social media, and it's a good idea to back it up with perspectives from real employees who work there. Let's see. And Nicole Kumar is a seasoned recruiter with 20 years of experience, and she shares with us that one of the best ways to learn about a company's culture is through the interview process. How do they treat you as they build that relationship with you? Be aware. Have your eyes and ears open. Be paying attention to the way that they're treating you throughout the process. Are they respectful, professional, appreciative of your time? During the interview process, they're putting their best foot forward. So if something rubs you the wrong way, it's a good idea to listen to your gut. Are there any other ways? It looks like, Mark, you have a question. What kind of questions can you ask during your interview to find some red flags about the company or the department? Absolutely. That hiring manager or that recruiter may not be the best person to talk to since they're really trying to bring you on board. So they may be only showing you the good sides of the position or the company. Mark, I recommend reaching out to someone within the organization from the NYU network. Mark, I believe you are an under, I'm sorry, I think you are a master's student. So whether or not you are, it's irrelevant. But but if you are in a master's program, SPS, that's right. So you can even tap into your network on LinkedIn from wherever you did your undergraduate program and also your NYU network that you're now a part of as an SPS master's student. So when you go on LinkedIn, you can search for people from your network who have worked at this organization, and you can search for someone who's worked in a comparable role to get the real insight. And you can just send them a quick little message. Hi, wondering, I see that you worked at X organization. I'm wondering if you'd ever have time for a 15-minute call to tell me about your experience working for that organization. Especially if they don't work at the company anymore and they've moved on, they're not going to sell you on something that isn't, they're going to give it to you straight. So that's one way to go about it. The other is glassdoor.com is a really good resource. And then and then you could just be transparent in your interview and say, what are some of the current challenges that your company or department is facing? And what role do you see the person in my role? What role would you like to see them play in solving that problem? I mean, you could just be completely transparent. What are your problems and how could I fix them if I was in this role? Or how do you see that playing out? Um, and then I would definitely do some research behind the scenes to prepare for that. All right. And what do you do if a company's online reviews are negative? Um, Absolutely, Mark. And keep the questions coming if you have them. So if a company has negative reviews, is it even worth? Well, oh, first of all, I wanted to ask everyone, are there any other ways that you would research company culture that we haven't already talked about? Does anyone have any ideas? I've mentioned a lot of the online resources and tapping into your professional networks, looking at the company's social media, anything else. Excited to see Vault. Janelle, thank you. That's another great resource that you can access through your NYU CareerNet account. Thank you. All right. So regarding the question about what to do if a company's online reviews are negative, let's take this one back to our seasoned recruiter, Nicole. She says, I would still interview with a company with low Glassdoor ratings. The reason being that perhaps a certain division or department is terrible to work in, but you're interviewing with a totally different group. Very true. Teams change all the time, people leave jobs, supervisors come in and out. The review on Glassdoor may not be an accurate description of what the team actually looks like in current day. Um, but if you have to narrow down the pool of companies you're considering, Glassdoor is certainly a good tool. Even better would be to connect with someone who works for the company in a similar role that you're considering. And she actually brings up a great point here. She says perhaps you can even ask to speak with someone that's been in the role you're interviewing for. So if the company doesn't really, going back to the red flags, Mark, if the company doesn't have anything to hide, you could just, say, would it be possible to talk to someone who's been in this role before accepting? Um, and if they, if they have full confidence that you would be happy there, I don't see why they would have an issue with that. And then she says, of course, if you know someone that works there, or you can find a contact of a contact through LinkedIn to have a confidential conversation, that would be beneficial as well. So informational interviews, we've talked, I think, most of you have heard about the importance of informational interviews, tapping into the network of folks who have worked for or are currently working for a company. um, Use your NYU network. One of the great things about going to a school like NYU is that we have people throughout the world, and you can go on and see on LinkedIn when you type in a company's name how many NYU graduates are at that company. And we have folks all over the world, um, which is really great. And again, just to connect with them, give them a very short, brief, personalized message where you're asking for a 15-minute phone call to learn more about their career and how they landed in the role. All right. Nicole is right. Lining up those informational interviews is wise at any point in your career. And the informational interview is going to give you information that isn't readily advertised on the job post. All right. Thank you, Nicole. So here's some key questions to ask in a job interview, whether it's a phone screening or an in-person interview. You can just go ahead and take your questions right to the management or to the hiring committee. Instead of asking a question like, well, what is your company culture? There are other questions you can ask that reveal the information that you're looking for. Knowing what and how the company celebrates gives you a sense of what they deem important and how they define success. Knowing how big decisions are made gives you a sense of whether or not you're going to have a say in major decisions. A company that values transparency is most likely going to hold company-wide meetings on a weekly basis where management shares what's going on with the company without hiding information from lower level employees. Some companies even have a company-wide little like Google Doc where everybody knows the projects that everyone in the company is working on. So if you have any questions or want to get involved in a different project, or you know exactly what your colleagues are working on, and there's no mystery there of, oh, am I being left out of something, or it's all right there on a team Google Doc. And I think it's also important to know the company's attitude towards supervision. I asked this question in an interview once, and the hiring manager, who would later be my boss, said to me, I hire talented people and then I get out of their way and let them get to work. And that statement revealed a lot about the level of trust in the office and what my relationship with him was ultimately going to be like. And I immediately felt good about that decision to accept. So, and then you can just come right out and say, give me 5 words that sum up your company culture. What's the best part of working here is a great question to ask. I actually asked this at a job interview once, and the person on my hiring committee revealed without hesitation, without missing a beat, the relationships. She said, our team eats lunch together every day. We do yoga as an office on Tuesday. And then shortly after the interview, I walked to my car and I saw the group that was made up my hiring committee, and they were laughing and they seemed like genuine friends. My point here is to keep your eyes and ears open during those interactions with your hiring committee or whoever hires you. Look around the office. How do people behave? Their behavior towards you and towards each other is indicative of how they're going to treat you once you become a colleague, an employee at the company. All good things to consider. So we've covered a lot of material in today's presentation on what to consider before accepting a position. And we hope that you'll pick right back up with us next week to continue this conversation. Next week, we're going to focus more on the salary negotiation process, how to manage multiple offers, which is a great problem to have, right? You've got a couple different companies that are after you, and how do you manage both of those relationships at the same time? The timing of accepting an offer, and then etiquette on how to accept and decline offers. I know there's a lot of unknowns surrounding that situation if you've never been in that situation before. So we will go through all of that next week. Wednesday, the 20th, we'll start again at 12 p.m. and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Before we take a break and come back together next week, does anyone have any questions about the material that we covered today? Any questions? Oh, Megan, thank you. Mark, we'll see you again next week. Please come prepared with any questions that you might have from today's presentation or questions that you have about salary negotiation. We'll just dive right in. And please feel free to take the feedback survey so that we can get a read on how today went for you and improve these webinars for the future. All right. We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'm kind of in and out, but like I actually caught more